They scanned an entire planet. Billions of cities, thousands of military bases, nuclear arsenals, advanced navies, and after all that, they chose rural Mississippi. Population stubborn. Armed, obviously. Warned, never. The Vraxian Dominion thought they had found the perfect soft target, quiet, flat, easy. What their scanners couldn't measure was the kind of people who wake up at 4:30 a.m., drink black coffee like it's medicine, and consider a bad attitude a personality trait worth protecting. If you've ever wondered what happens when the most advanced alien empire in the galaxy lands in the wrong county on the wrong day, buckle up. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and help us in reaching our first 1,000 subscribers, and drop a comment telling me what you think these aliens deserved. Now let's step into Harlow County, Mississippi, where first contact wasn't a historic moment. It was a Tuesday, and that made it worse. The Vraxian Dominion had conquered 47 worlds. Not one of them had fought back with a tractor, but that was later. First, there was the planning. High Commander Drevak Sorn stood at the center of the Dominion's tactical bridge. A vast circular room filled with holographic star maps, and the quiet hum of a civilization that had never once lost a first-contact operation. He was 7 feet tall, gray-skinned, with 4 eyes arranged in a perfect diamond pattern that gave him 360 degrees of vision. He had never been surprised. His species considered surprise a cognitive failure. He was about to fail spectacularly. "Show me the target zone," he said. His intelligence officer, a younger Vraxian named Priel, enlarged the holographic display. A wide green landmass filled the projection. Forests, rivers, flat farmland stretching in every direction. Small clusters of structures scattered across quiet roads. The largest population center in the designated zone had fewer than 8,000 inhabitants. "North American continent," Priel said. "Southern Interior Region, Subdivision, Mississippi, specific target area, Harlow County." Drevak studied the terrain with all 4 eyes. "Military presence," Priel checked. "Minimal official installations within 40 kilometers. Defensive infrastructure, limited, some law enforcement vehicles. No observable heavy weapons." Priel did not mention several things the scan had technically recorded, but flagged as civilian and therefore irrelevant. He did not mention the 24,000 privately registered firearms spread across a county of 31,000 people. He did not mention the 11 hunting clubs, 4 gun ranges, 2 taxidermists, and one man named Roy Dale Hutchins, who had welded a .50 caliber machine gun mount to the bed of his F-250 for what his neighbors described only as reasons. He also did not mention the cultural data. The behavioral models his department used had been designed to analyze civilizations based on centralized government response, military chain of command, and population compliance ratios. They had not been designed to account for communities where the chain of command was a group text. The military response was whoever showed up. And the compliance ratio was a concept people found genuinely funny. Most critically, Priel did not mention that it was a Tuesday. In Harlow County, Tuesday had a specific weight. Monday was for surviving. Wednesday meant the week was half dead. But Tuesday was the cruelest day, far enough from the weekend to feel abandoned, close enough to remember what rest felt like. Tuesday in Harlow County was when the coffee had to be strongest, the patience had to be thinnest, and any man who looked at you wrong at the feed store was likely to hear about it. Drevak approved the target. "We move at first light," he said. "Establish ground presence, demonstrate superior force. Achieve immediate submission." He had said those same words 47 times before. 47 worlds had submitted. He said them now with complete confidence. Down below, in a small white farmhouse on County Road 9, a man named Dale Briggs was already awake. Dale was 54 years old, built like a fence post wrapped in flannel, and had been farming soybeans and corn in Harlow County his entire life. He woke at 4:15 every morning without an alarm because his body had decided sleep was a luxury it no longer offered past that hour. He made coffee in a percolator that was older than his truck, stood at his kitchen window, and looked out at his fields in the dark the way men do, when they're not thinking about anything in particular but would fight to the death for all of it. His dog, a large mixed breed named Sergeant, sat beside him. Neither of them knew what was coming. 3 miles away, at the Harlow County Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Tom Garrett was filling out paperwork he had been ignoring since last Thursday. Tom was 58, gray at the temples, and had the kind of calm that only comes from decades of dealing with things that should not be possible and somehow are. He had handled floods, bar fights, a man who tried to sell stolen alligators out of a minivan, and one incident involving a riding lawnmower and a convenience store that he had agreed never to discuss in writing. He poured his third coffee of the morning. His deputy, a younger man named Chase Webb, walked in and dropped into his chair. "Quiet night," Chase said. Tom grunted. "Don't say that." "Why not?" Tom looked at him. "Because every time somebody says that in this county, something catches fire," Chase laughed. Outside, unseen and silent, the first Vraxian scout ship descended through the clouds like a black needle slipping through dark fabric. It was cloaked, invisible to radar, inaudible to human ears. The pilot guided it over the tree line and set it down in a soybean field 3 miles north of town with mechanical precision. 6 alien scouts stepped out into the Mississippi pre-dawn. They were elite, trained for infiltration on worlds with far more sophisticated detection systems than this one. They wore adaptive stealth armor that shifted color to match surroundings. They carried scanners, translators, and disruption devices. They had trained for 2 years for exactly this moment. What they had not trained for was Sergeant. Dale's dog raised his head. His ears went straight up. A sound built low in his chest, not quite a bark, something older than that. Dale looked down at him. "What is it, boy?" Sergeant was already at the door. Dale set down his coffee, reached for the shotgun beside the door without thinking, the way a man does when the habit is so old it doesn't require a decision. He stepped out onto the porch. The morning was dark and cool, dew heavy on the grass, the fields quiet in that specific way that means something has disturbed them. Sergeant ran toward the soybean field and stopped at the edge. Barking now, hard and certain. Dale raised the shotgun and clicked on his flashlight. The beam swept across 6 figures standing in his field. They were tall, too tall, gray-skinned, four-eyed, holding devices that looked nothing like anything built on Earth. Dale stood perfectly still for 3 seconds. Then he spoke. "Well," he said quietly, "you boys picked the wrong field." He went back inside, picked up his phone, and called Tom Garrett. Tom picked up on the second ring. "Sheriff's Department." "Tom," Dale said, "it's Dale Briggs. I got something in my soybean field." "What kind of something?" Dale looked out the window at the 6 alien scouts standing frozen under Sergeant's furious attention. "The kind that ain't from here," he said. "Not from anywhere near here." There was a pause on the line. Tom said, "I'll bring Chase." Dale said, "Bring more than Chase." Tom looked at his deputy. Chase raised an eyebrow. Tom reached for his radio. What happened next started small, the way all historic things do, a dog barking in a dark field. A farmer with a shotgun and no patience for nonsense. A sheriff who had seen too much to be surprised and too much to be scared. But High Commander Drevek Sorn was already guiding his main fleet toward the atmosphere, confident, organized, completely certain that within 6 hours, Harlow County would be under Dominion control. He had 47 victories behind him. He had no idea what a Tuesday in Mississippi was about to cost him. The 6 alien scouts had trained for infiltration. They had not trained for Dale Briggs. The lead scout, designated field operative Kren, activated his translator the moment the flashlight hit him. Standard protocol. Identify, communicate, neutralize panic. He had done it before on other worlds. It always worked. "Do not be alarmed," Kren said. His translator rendered the words in flat, precise English. "We are conducting a survey of this region." "We mean no harm to your—" Dale pumped the shotgun. Kren stopped. "Now I don't know what a survey looks like where y'all come from," Dale said. "But around here it don't involve sneaking through a man's soybeans at 4:30 in the morning." One of the scouts whispered in Vraxian, "He is hostile." Another whispered back, "He has been awake since before dawn." He was already hostile. This was accurate. Within 11 minutes, Tom Garrett's cruiser came down County Road 9 with Chase behind him in another vehicle. Behind Chase came Dale's neighbor, a man named Bobby Pruitt who had heard the commotion and arrived with a spotlight, a lever-action rifle, and a thermos of coffee he had made specifically for whatever this turned out to be. The 6 alien scouts stood in the field, surrounded, outnumbered by angry men who had not yet finished their first cup of the morning. Kren attempted diplomacy again. "We represent the Vraxian Dominion, a coalition of—" Tom held up one hand. "Son, it is 4:40 in the morning on a Tuesday. I have had 2.5 cups of coffee. I have not slept well since March. And you are standing in this man's soybeans." He let that sit. "So I need you to understand that my patience is a very limited resource right now." Kren's translator worked through the sentence and flagged several cultural data points it couldn't resolve. The reference to March, the specificity of the coffee quantity, the particular tone of voice that indicated the speaker was not afraid but was deeply, genuinely tired of things. "We require your cooperation," Kren said. Tom looked at Chase. Chase looked at Bobby. Bobby sipped his coffee. "No," Tom said simply. Kren had never heard that word delivered so quietly and so completely before. On other worlds, no had always come with fear behind it. This no had nothing behind it except the absolute certainty of a man who had made a decision and wasn't going to revisit it. The scouts attempted to activate their cloaking devices. Dale had noticed during the standoff that the devices were worn on the left forearm. When the first scout reached for his, Dale stepped forward and put his hand over it. "I wouldn't," Dale said. The scout froze. Bobby Prout, who had grown up hunting deer, turkey, and once a feral hog that destroyed his garden, had spent the standoff watching the 6 scouts the way a man watches livestock he's deciding whether to pen or chase. He had quietly walked around behind them while Tom was talking. All 6 scouts suddenly realized there were 4 men, and they were surrounded on all sides without having moved a foot. Chase zip-tied the first scout's hands before anyone had made a formal decision to do that. It just seemed like the right thing. Within 20 minutes, all 6 Vraxian elite scouts were seated in the bed of Dale's truck, zip-tied, watched by Sergeant, and listening to Bobby Prout explain the soybean crop situation in more detail than any interstellar operative had ever been briefed on agriculture. "Yield was down last year," Bobby said. "Wet spring, lost a good portion of the north field, wasn't weather either, soil drainage." "Dale's been fighting that north field for years." The scouts stared at him. "You don't care about that," Bobby said. "I'm just saying you landed in the worst field on this property, which tells me your scouting ain't as good as you think it is." Meanwhile, Tom Garrett was back in his cruiser, calling every number he had. County emergency, state police. The National Guard liaison he had met once at a conference in Jackson and never expected to call. He got through to 3 of them. He told each one the same thing in the same calm voice. "We have a situation in Harlow County, non-human, 6 confirmed, main force incoming. I need everything you've got, and I need it fast." He did not use the word aliens. He had found in his career that specific language confused people and slowed things down. He said non-human. It got the point across. Up in orbit, High Commander Drevek Sorn had lost contact with his recon team. This had never happened before. "Signal?" he asked. Priel checked. Last transmission was at 04:43 local time. After that, silence. Drevek turned all 4 eyes toward the planet below. "Send the secondary ground unit." Retrieval and assessment. The secondary unit was a 12-soldier tactical squad. Armor, plasma rifles, a grav sled for transport, standard heavy response. They descended 40 minutes later to a field 2 miles from Dale's farm, selected as a secondary landing zone based on heat signature data that showed no human presence. It showed no human presence because the humans were already moving. Tom had called Carl Beaumont, who ran the Harlow County Volunteer Fire Department and also happened to own a farm equipment company with 4 large combines, 2 grain augers, and a flatbed truck carrying a bulldozer. He'd been meaning to return to a job site since last week. Tom had called Hector Mills, a retired Army staff sergeant who now ran a hardware store and had opinions about defensive perimeters that he had been waiting 30 years to make relevant. Tom had called the Harlow County Hunting Club, all 41 members who had a group text, a location pin system, and a standing agreement that if somebody sent the word "serious" in the chat, you came immediately and asked questions later. Tom sent the word "serious" at 5:02 a.m. By 5:40, there were 63 people on County Road 9 and the 2 roads that crossed it. The 12 alien soldiers emerged from their grav sled into a field they believed was empty. It was not empty. It had Carl Beaumont on one side with a combine that weighed 35,000 pounds. It had Hector Mills on the other side with 11 men arranged in a position he called just common sense. It had Dale Briggs in the middle, still holding the same shotgun, still running on the same pre-dawn coffee, still radiating the specific energy of a man whose Tuesday had gone sideways and who intended to make that somebody's problem. The alien squad leader raised his plasma rifle and activated his translator. "Stand down. You are outgunned." Hector Mills looked at the squad leader the way a man looks at someone who has said something so wrong it almost looped back around to impressive. "Son," Hector said, "I have been outgunned before. It's never stopped anything." The squad leader fired a warning shot into the air. The combine's engine roared to life. Carl Beaumont had decided that a warning shot was a conversation starter, not an ending. What followed was less a battle and more a lesson. The kind of lesson that gets taught fast and remembered forever. The 12 alien soldiers were trained, equipped, and completely unprepared for a man in a combine the size of a small building who drove like he had a schedule to keep and zero interest in slowing down. 3 scouts went left. Carl went left faster. 2 scouts tried to flank. Hector's men had already covered the flank. 1 scout attempted to call for extraction. Bobby Prout took his communicator. "Give me that," Bobby said, and then into the communicator to whoever was listening on the other end. "Y'all need to turn around." There was a crackling silence from orbit. Then Priel's voice, stiff and uncertain. "This channel is restricted to Dominion personnel." Bobby said. "Well, you got 12 of your people pinned down in a soybean field in Mississippi on a Tuesday morning. So I'd say the channel situation is the least of your problems." High Commander Drevak Sorn leaned forward in his command chair. He had conquered 47 worlds. Not one of them had talked to him like that. He looked at Priel. Priel looked at the display. On the ground below, the tactical readout showed 12 elite soldiers stationary, surrounded, not fighting, not retreating, just contained by farmers. Drevak stood up slowly. "Prepare the main landing force," he said. His voice was low and hard and carried the weight of 47 victories. "All units, full deployment." He was done being patient. The people of Harlow County were about to find out what the Vraxian Dominion looked like when it stopped holding back. And the people of Harlow County were already on the phone with each other figuring out what to do about it. The main Vraxian landing force descended like a storm that had been building for years. 42 ships, not scout craft, not survey vessels. Combat landers, armored, angular, black as deep space, each one carrying a full platoon of Dominion soldiers. They broke through the cloud cover in a formation that turned the Tuesday morning sky over Harlow County into something that looked like the end of a story, rather than the beginning of a fight. It was neither. People in Harlow County saw it coming from 15 miles away. Donna Fletcher, who ran the Sunrise Diner on Highway 61, was flipping pancakes when the shadow moved across her parking lot. She looked up through the window, looked at the sky, looked back at the griddle, then she picked up her phone and called her sister. "Linda," she said. "You watching the sky?" Linda said she was. "You got your father's deer rifle?" Linda said she did. "Bring it," Donna said, "and bring whoever you got with you." She hung up, turned back to the griddle, and flipped the pancakes. They weren't done yet. And Donna Fletcher had never served a burnt pancake in 31 years of business, and she was not going to start because of aliens. The landing crafts came down in 3 waves. First wave hit the open farmland north of town. Second wave targeted the main highway corridor. Third wave went for the center of Colby, Harlow County's largest town, population 7,400, currently awake, aware, and deeply unimpressed. High Commander Drevak Sorn had designed the formation himself. Simultaneous pressure from 3 directions, no escape route, immediate visual dominance. Within 20 minutes, the population would be surrounded, shocked, and compliant. He had used this exact formation on the 4th world he ever conquered. He had never used it on a place with a group text. The Harlow County Hunting Club chat had been active since 5:02 a.m. By 6:15, it had 847 messages. By the time the ships landed, every member had a position, a neighbor had joined them. And 3 people who weren't members, but followed the right people on Facebook had shown up anyway and been handed jobs. Hector Mills had spent the 40 minutes between the scout containment and the main landing doing the one thing he was built to do. He had looked at every road, every field, every structure he knew, and he had thought about it the way a man thinks when there's no time to be wrong. He made 4 calls. The first was to a man named Gary Sims who owned the quarry 6 miles east of town and had 2 dump trucks, a water cannon used for dust control, and a nephew who drove like he had nothing to lose. The second was to Pastor Rich Wheeler of First Baptist Colby, who had 340 people showing up every Sunday and the organizational ability to feed them all in under 40 minutes. Tom Garrett had already called the church. Hector called again just to make sure the parking lot was clear and the fellowship hall was set up as a staging area. The third call was to Walt Greer, who ran the farm co-op and currently had 3 large grain trailers, 2 tractors, and 1 piece of equipment that Hector had seen Walt use once to remove a stuck combine from a flooded field, and that Hector now thought of as a military asset. The fourth call was to his own voicemail. He left himself a message that said, "North Road, East Field, 2 choke points. Don't forget the water cannon." He had learned in the Army that the most important thing you could forget under pressure was the thing you had thought of 20 minutes earlier. The first wave of aliens landed in Dale Briggs' North Field, which meant they landed on the field Dale had already identified as a drainage problem. It had rained 4 days ago. It was still soft. 3 Vraxian combat landers set down and immediately sank 4 inches into the earth. The ramps lowered. Armored soldiers marched forward in precise formation. The first 6 steps were fine. The 7th step for the soldier in the lead went straight through the soft crust into 6 inches of Mississippi mud. He went down. The soldier behind him stepped around and went down in a different spot. The formation collapsed in approximately 45 seconds. From across the fence line, Dale watched with his arms crossed. "Told 'em," he said to Sergeant. "That field's got drainage problems." The second wave on the highway corridor met Gary Sims' nephew, who came around a bend in a loaded dump truck at a speed that suggested a complete absence of concern for traffic law, and deposited 12 tons of quarry gravel directly across the road in front of the alien advance column. The column stopped. The grav tanks, which operated on repulsion fields calibrated for level ground, struggled to adjust to the sudden irregular terrain. Behind them, Walt Greer arrived with his grain trailers placed crosswise on the 2 approach roads. The third wave hit Colby itself. 40 alien soldiers came down the main street with plasma rifles raised, armor gleaming, visors locked. It was, by any reasonable measure, an overwhelming show of force. They were met by Donna Fletcher standing in the middle of the road, holding a cast iron skillet, and a look that had ended arguments, ended relationships, and once ended a health inspection that had gone sideways. "You boys want breakfast?" she said, "because if not, you are blocking my morning rush." The alien squad leader's translator worked through the sentence twice. He pointed his rifle at her. She did not move. Behind her, every pickup truck on the street started its engine simultaneously. There were 19 of them, doors opened, people got out. None of them were soldiers. They were farmers, mechanics, store owners, a retired postal worker named Frank, and a man named Big Jim Coffee, who had driven 40 minutes because someone had texted him the word serious, and that was all he ever needed. "You will surrender this area immediately," the squad leader announced. Frank, the retired postal worker, raised his hand. "I got a question." The squad leader looked at him. "Do you have any idea," Frank said, "how little we have to lose on a Tuesday?" The answer, it turned out, was that the aliens had no idea. No intelligence file, no cultural model, no behavioral algorithm had ever tried to quantify what happens when you corner people who woke up already annoyed, who have known each other their entire lives, who have no intention of leaving, and who consider backing down a form of bad manners. The squad leader fired a plasma bolt into the air. Donna stepped aside. The 19 pickup trucks did not. What followed on Main Street was the kind of controlled chaos that only looks chaotic from the outside. From the inside, everyone knew what they were doing. The trucks formed a wall. Hector's voice came over the hunting club group text with 3 words. "Go, North Choke Point." 60 people moved. the water cannon from Gary Sims' quarry, mounted on the back of a flatbed by his nephew in under 20 minutes using baling wire and determination. Opened up on the alien flank unit, attempting to push past the grain trailers. Alien soldiers in advanced combat, armor discovered something their engineers had never tested against. 800 gallons per minute of pressurized water directed by a man with a personal grudge and a good angle. They discovered it thoroughly. Up in orbit, Drevak stared at his tactical display. Every insertion point was stalled. The north field was a mud trap. The highway was blocked by gravel and grain trailers. The town center had become something his display could only classify as contested, which was a category usually reserved for fortified military positions, not diners and farm equipment. "Report," he said. Priel checked every channel. The answers came back in fragments. Mud, water pressure, trucks, a woman with a skillet, a man who kept calling himself Frank asking questions. Drevak turned from the display. "This is not a soft target," he said. Priel said nothing because there was nothing useful to say. Drevak's jaw tightened. "Bring the heavy armor." The grav tanks descended from the second wave carriers. Massive, floating, impervious to anything the humans had thrown so far. Each one worth more than every building in Colby combined. Each one capable of leveling a city block in under a minute. They were Drevak's answer to everything that had gone wrong this morning. They were also about to meet Walt Greer's equipment. And Walt Greer, standing beside his biggest piece of machinery, with a look of quiet focus that his wife recognized as the most dangerous expression he owned, was about to make the kind of decision that people in Harlow County would argue about for the next 40 years. He picked up his phone and called Hector. "Hector," he said. "You know that thing I got that I used to pull that combine out of the flood field?" Hector said. "Yeah," Walt said. "It hooks to bigger things than combines." There was a pause. Hector said, "Walt." Walt said, "Yep." Hector said, "Do it." The grav tanks came down the road, and Walt Greer smiled for the first time all morning. The Vraxian grav tanks were the finest ground assault vehicles in the Dominion's arsenal. They floated 2 feet off the ground on repulsion fields that could be calibrated to any terrain. They carried forward plasma cannons capable of destroying hardened military bunkers. Their armor was rated to withstand orbital bombardment. Their targeting systems could track and engage 40 separate threats simultaneously. In 47 planetary conquests, not one grav tank had ever been stopped by anything a civilian population could field. Walt Greer had not been briefed on any of that. He was standing next to a hydraulic recovery vehicle, the kind of machine used to pull 80,000-pound combines out of flooded fields, with a reinforced recovery cable already attached to the tow. Hitch, his nephew by marriage, a young man named Travis who had learned to operate heavy equipment at 14 and had never once been accused of excessive caution, sat in the cab. "You see the lead one?" Walt said. Travis leaned out the window. "I see it." "You know what to do." Travis looked at the grav tank, looked at the cable, looked back at his uncle. "Uncle Walt, that thing is floating." "Everything that floats," Walt said, "can be pulled." Travis thought about that for 3 seconds. "That's not actually how physics works." "Hook it and find out," Walt said. Travis hooked it. The grav tank's repulsion field, it turned out, was calibrated to push against solid ground. When the cable attached to its rear housing and the hydraulic winch engaged, the field had 2 choices: push harder against the ground or lose the tank. The field pushed harder. The tank's nose lifted. The angle changed, the calibration broke. The tank tilted 45 degrees, drifted sideways off the road, and settled into the drainage ditch on the east shoulder with a sound like a very expensive mistake. The column behind it stopped. Inside the second tank, the commander switched to manual override and tried to go around. He came around the tilted lead tank and found 3 grain trailers, end to end, across the road. With Bobby Prout sitting on top of the middle one, eating a sandwich and watching with the relaxed interest of a man at a sporting event. "You're not getting through here," Bobby said. The tank commander fired a warning shot at the trailer. The trailer exploded. Bobby had jumped off the back before the shot landed. He hit the ground, rolled, came up with his rifle, and was behind the lead tank's recovery cable before the smoke cleared. "That was a nice trailer," Bobby said, to nobody in particular. Walt's gonna be mad. Walt was already on the phone. They shot my trailer. Hector said, I know. That was a good trailer. Walt, focus. I'm focused, Walt said. I'm just saying it was a good trailer. Hector had spent the morning doing what 30 years of military training and a lifetime of living in a small county had prepared him to do. Thinking 3 moves ahead, while everyone else was reacting to what was happening now. He knew the grav tanks were coming. He had known since Drevak's forces shifted to heavy armor that the equation on the ground was about to change. He had prepared for it, not with heavy weapons. Not with military hardware. With the thing that Harlow County had always had more of than anywhere else. People who knew every inch of this land and had grown up solving problems with what was available. The quarry water cannon had done its work on the alien infantry. Alien soldiers in advanced armor did not like 800 gallons per minute. Their suits were sealed against atmospheric conditions, vacuum, and radiation. They were not sealed against hydraulic pressure applied creatively at close range. 3 soldiers had gone down when Gary Sims' nephew hit them in the joints where the armor connected. Alien engineers had not tested joint seals against Mississippi quarry equipment. They were going to regret that in the debrief. The hunting club had moved into the tree line on both sides of County Road 9 and the intersecting farm roads. 41 hunters who spent every season in those trees knew every clear line, every angle, every distance. They weren't trying to destroy the alien equipment. They were making noise, movement, and pressure from every direction at once, keeping the alien ground commanders reactive instead of decisive. Hector had explained it simply in a voice message to the club captain, "Don't let them think, keep them busy." On Main Street, the fight had become personal. Donna Fletcher had retreated into the diner, only to reload and come back out. The alien squad that had entered Colby's center had met resistance from every angle, locals using storefronts as cover, vehicles as barriers. Familiar terrain as an advantage that no amount of tactical training could compensate for quickly. One alien soldier had chased a man named Randy down an alley and come out on the other end facing 6 more people because Randy had grown up on that block and knew exactly which alley connected to which street. Tom Garrett moved through it all with his radio, coordinating what he could, leaving the rest to people he trusted, which in Harlow County was most people. He found Hector behind the co-op building. "Tanks," Tom said. "Know about him," Hector said. "Walt's slowing the column." "Walt's buying time." Hector looked at Tom. "Drevak's going to figure out that the roads are a trap. When he does, he'll try to go cross-country, leave the roads entirely." Tom thought about that. "Through the fields." "Through the fields," Hector confirmed. "And in the fields, he's on our ground." Tom looked out at the open farmland that surrounded Colby on 3 sides, fields he had driven past his entire life. Fields that looked flat and simple from the road, and were in fact a landscape that every local knew by memory, the soft spots, the drainage cuts, the hidden creek beds. The fences strung low enough to catch something moving fast, the irrigation channels dug just below ground level that you couldn't see until you were in them. "Get Dale," Tom said. Hector was already dialing. Up on the command ship, Drevak had reached the same conclusion Hector had predicted. The roads were contested. The infantry advance was stalled. The grav tank column had been slowed by one man with a hydraulic cable and a philosophy about floating objects. He turned to his tactical officer. "Abandon road approach. Go cross-country. All armor. Push directly through the farmland." It was the right tactical decision by every conventional measure. It was also exactly what Harlow County had been waiting for. Dale Briggs was standing at the edge of his south field when the first grav tank left the road and started across the open land. He watched it come. He had a radio in one hand, a thermos of coffee in the other. He keyed the radio. "They're coming off the road. South field heading your way, Carl." Carl Beaumont's voice came back calm and flat. "I'm ready." Dale watched the tank cross the first 100 yards, moving fast now, confident, the repulsion field handling the open ground well. Then it hit the irrigation channel. Dale had dug that channel 15 years ago. It ran 30 feet across and 4 feet deep in a straight line across the south field, designed to carry runoff to the pond at the back of the property. It was invisible from above and not marked on any map the Dominion had accessed. The grav tank's field compensated for the drop, but not fast enough. The nose went down, the field recalibrated. The tank lurched, recovered, and came up out of the channel at an angle, momentum broken, vulnerable for 3 seconds. Carl Beaumont was there in 3 seconds. The Combine hit the tank from the side at the moment of maximum instability. 35,000 pounds of steel and agricultural engineering applied at the exact wrong moment for the Vraxian Dominion. The tank spun, corrected, and was suddenly facing backward, pointed at its own column. The second tank braked hard to avoid it. The third tank hit the second. The column was tangled. In the tree line, the hunting club opened up, not on the armor, which would have been useless, but on every sensor, camera, and external antenna they could see on the tank surfaces. Hector had briefed them on that 2 hours ago. Don't waste shots on the body, take out the eyes. The tanks went partially blind. Blind armor in unfamiliar terrain, surrounded by noise from every direction, with their column tangled in a drainage channel. On a Tuesday morning in Mississippi, it was not the conquest Drevak had planned. On the command ship, the tactical display had become a confusion of stalled signals, broken formations, and communication fragments that made no coherent picture. Priel stood at his station and did not speak. Drevak stared at the display for a long time. "How," he said finally, not to anyone in particular, "are civilians doing this?" Priel said quietly, "Commander, I need to show you something." He brought up the intercepted communications from the ground, not military channels, not government frequencies, text messages, voice calls. A social media platform showing posts from the area updating in real time. A live video streamed from a man named Randy who was narrating the Main Street situation while crouched behind a parked truck. Randy had 2,200 viewers. One of his comments read, "Mississippi does not play." Another said, "Tell them about the irrigation channel." Randy said to his viewers, "They hit the irrigation channel." The comments exploded. Drevak watched this for 30 seconds in complete silence. "They are coordinating through entertainment platforms," Priel said carefully. Drevak said nothing. And Priel continued, "There are more coming. We are detecting vehicle movement on every road within 20 kilometers. They are still arriving." Drevak turned from the display. He walked to the window of his command bridge and looked down at the planet below. He had won 47 times. He had walked into this one confident in the pattern. Superior firepower. Shock and awe, immediate submission. But submission required a population that believed it could lose. And somewhere below him, in a county in the middle of a continent, the people who were fighting his invasion had not once, in the entire morning, behaved like people who believed they could lose. They had behaved like people who were annoyed, deeply, profoundly on a Tuesday morning annoyed. And that, Drevak was beginning to understand, was something entirely different. He turned back to Priel. "Options," he said. Priel hesitated. "Commander, the orbital bombardment array?" "No," Drevak said immediately. He was a conqueror, not a destroyer. A dead world had no value. "The EMP cascade. Their vehicles are older than our scanning range. Half of them will still run." Priel said nothing for a moment. "Then we could attempt direct negotiation." Drevak looked at him. "With the civilians," Priel said. Drevak turned back to the window. Down below, on a road in Mississippi, a man named Frank was still asking questions nobody had answered yet. And High Commander Drevak Sorn, conqueror of 47 worlds, feared across 6 star systems, destroyer of the Hellion Trade League, was about to discover that negotiating with Harlow County was a completely different problem than conquering it. He just didn't know yet how different. High Commander Drevak Sorn did not negotiate. That was not arrogance. It was simply a fact of his career. In 47 planetary conquests, the moment of negotiation had always been the moment after submission, a formality, a signing. A ceremony where the defeated world acknowledged what it already understood. He had never negotiated from a position of stall. He had never sat across from a population that had not yet lost and had to find the words to make them understand that they should. He descended to the surface himself. This was not in the protocol. Command doctrine said the High Commander remained in orbit until the ground was secured. But the ground was not secured, and Drevak had decided that the problem below was a problem of communication. Whoever was leading the resistance down there had to be found, identified, and spoken to directly. He came down in a shielded command shuttle with a 6-soldier escort. They landed in the cleared area north of Colby, where the first wave had established a partial perimeter before getting caught in the mud situation. The mud had dried somewhat. It was still unpleasant. Drevek stepped out. The air hit him first warm, thick with humidity, smelling of cut grass and something cooking somewhere in the distance. He had been on 47 worlds. None of them had smelled like this. His escort fanned out. The perimeter soldiers reported no immediate threat. The road ahead was empty. He had barely taken 3 steps when Tom Garrett's cruiser came around the corner. Tom got out of the cruiser the way he always got out of it, unhurried. One hand on the door frame, standing up slowly the way men do when their knees have been through too many cold mornings. He had his badge on his belt, his sidearm on his hip, his hat on straight. He looked at Drevek the way he had looked at everything that morning, like a man who had seen worse and expected to see more. "You the one in charge?" Tom said. Drevek's translator rendered it. "I am High Commander Drevek Sorn. I represent the Vraxian Dominion." Tom nodded. "Tom Garrett." "Sheriff of Harlow County." He looked at the 6-soldier escort. "You can tell your people to lower those. They're making folks nervous." Drevek signaled. The escort lowered their weapons. Not because the order was wise tactically. It wasn't. But because Drevek wanted to establish tone, and the sheriff's tone had been so calm that matching it felt like the right opening move. "You are the commander of this resistance," Drevek said. "I'm the sheriff," Tom said. "People are doing what they're doing because they decided to. I didn't order any of it." Drevek processed that. "Then who did?" Tom thought about it. "Dale Briggs called me first. Hector Mills did the organizing. Carl Beaumont blocked your armor. Walt Greer pulled your tank into the ditch. Donna Fletcher held Main Street. Bobby Prout." He paused. "I don't entirely know what Bobby's been doing all morning, but I assume it's been useful." Drevek stared at him. "These are all private citizens." "That's right. With no military command structure." "Correct. And no unified chain of authority." Tom considered that. "We've got a group text," he said. "Works pretty well." There was a long silence. Somewhere in the distance, a cow lowed. The humidity pressed down on everything like a warm hand. Drevek straightened. "I will offer you terms. Lay down your resistance. Allow Dominion administration to be established. Your population will be integrated into the Empire as a productive colonial unit. Your rights as individuals will be—" "No," Tom said. Drevek paused. "I have not finished." "I heard enough," Tom said. He wasn't rude about it. He said it the way he had said it at 4:40 in the morning to the scout in Dale's field, completely and without anger, the way a man delivers a decision that doesn't require a discussion. Drevek tried a different approach. "You cannot win this militarily. My forces are stuck in a drainage ditch," Tom said, "and a mud field. And a grain trailer situation on the highway." He tilted his head slightly. "Your scout team is in the back of a pickup truck. Bobby Prout's been explaining soybean farming to them for 3 hours. Drevek had no response to that. "Here's what I'll offer you," Tom said. "You collect your people, you leave this county. You don't come back and nobody gets hurt worse than they already have." Drevek looked at him. "And if I refuse—" Tom looked back, not threatening, not dramatic, just certain. "Then we keep going. And I'll be honest with you, my people aren't tired. They're mad. And in my experience, mad lasts longer than organized." Behind Tom, at the tree line, Hector Mills was watching through binoculars. Beside him, Dale Briggs was on the phone with Carl Beaumont. Walt Greer was untangling his recovery cable from the drainage channel. Donna Fletcher had sent 3 people back to the diner to start a fresh pot because this was going to take a while and nobody could function without coffee. Randy was still live streaming. He had 11,000 viewers now. One comment said, "Tell him about Tuesday." Randy whispered to his audience. "They're talking. Sheriff Tom's out there. He looks like he's ordering lunch. The alien guy looks like he's never had a bad day in his life and is really upset about having one now." Comments flooded in. Drevek, standing in a field in Mississippi, was receiving real-time intelligence from Priel in orbit that the situation had not improved anywhere. The tank column was disorganized. The infantry advance was pinned. 3 squads had lost external communications. One squad had entered what appeared to be a church and had not re-emerged, which Priel described carefully as an ambiguous status. "Commander," Priel said in his earpiece. I need to advise you that the longer we remain in this engagement, the more vehicle traffic we detect approaching from surrounding counties. Drevek said, very quietly. How many? Priel paused. By our current projection, a significant number. Define significant, another pause. The entire surrounding region appears to have heard about this. Drevek closed his eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Then he opened them. Tom was still standing there, waiting, not impatiently. Just waiting the way men wait who are comfortable with silence and have nowhere more important to be. What is Tuesday? Drevek said. Tom looked at him. What? Tuesday, Drevek said. Multiple references to this specific day. In your communications, in the resistance response, in the behavior of your population. What is its significance? Tom was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Tuesday's just the worst day of the week. Nothing special about it. It's just the day that's farthest from any good day you can name. That's it. Drevek processed that. And this made your population more resistant. Tom almost smiled. It made us more stubborn, different thing. From somewhere behind the tree line came the sound of a vehicle, then several vehicles. Tom did not look. Drevek did. 3 more pickup trucks were coming down County Road 9. Behind them, 2 more. Behind those, a flatbed carrying something large under a tarp. Drevek looked at Tom. Tom said, those folks drove from 2 counties over. Word travels. He paused. You want to meet them or you want to talk about leaving? Drevek turned away from the road. He stood with his back to Tom Garrett for a long moment. 4 eyes, 6 senses, a career of conquest behind him. And in front of him, a flat green county in the middle of a continent that had treated his invasion like a Tuesday inconvenience. Priel, he said quietly into his earpiece. Commander, prepare extraction for all ground forces. Priel was silent for a moment. Then, all forces, Commander. All, Drevek said. Complete withdrawal now. He turned back to Tom. We will withdraw our forces, he said. It cost him something to say it. The cost was visible even on a face built differently than any human face Tom had ever read. Your county will be appreciated, Tom said simply. They stood there for a moment. Then Drevek said, you are a very difficult people. Tom put on his hat. We know. He got back in his cruiser. He did not wait to watch them leave. He had things to do, reports to file, people to check on. Donna's diner was probably a disaster area. Hector needed to be debriefed. Dale was going to need help with the South Field. Bobby Prout had a whole tow truck situation to deal with, and it was still Tuesday. Above the fields of Harlow County, one by one the Vraxian ships rose. The last combat lander lifted off at 4:42 p.m. Exactly 12 hours after the first scout ship had landed in Dale Briggs' soybean field. From orbit, Drevek watched the green landscape fall away below him. He had never given an order to withdraw before, not once, in 47 engagements. He gave the order now without ceremony. Set course for deep space. The fleet turned and moved away from Earth. Engines lit. The planet shrank in the aft display. Priel approached carefully. Shall I prepare the after-action report? Drevek thought for a moment. Yes, what classification should I give the engagement? Drevek looked at the planet one last time. Unresolved, he said, and flagged, do not return to that region. Priel made a note. The planet as a whole or the county, Drevek said. Specifically the county, he paused, and note the day. Priel looked at his record. Tuesday. Put it in the file, Drevek said. As a threat condition, the fleet disappeared into deep space. And on the ground in Harlow County, Mississippi, something was already happening that would have concerned Drevek more than anything that had happened all day, if he had known about it. People were getting hungry. By 5:00 p.m., Harlow County had the kind of quiet that only comes after something loud, not peaceful, not empty. Just settled, the way air settles after a storm, heavy with what was and full of what comes next. Smoke still rose from 2 spots in the north field. One of Walt Greer's grain trailers was a scorched frame on the shoulder of the highway. The south field irrigation channel had a grav tank in it that nobody had figured out how to move yet, though 3 separate people had already formed opinions on the subject. Tom Garrett drove the length of County Road 9 slowly, window down, radio quiet. He passed Dale's farm, past the mud field where the first scouts had landed, past the spot where 6 elite Vraxian operatives had been zip-tied and given an agricultural briefing by Bobby Prout, who was now sitting on his tailgate having a sandwich and looking entirely satisfied with his Tuesday. Tom pulled over. "Bobby," he said. Bobby nodded. "Sheriff, you know there's a grav tank in Dale's irrigation channel." "I know," Bobby said. "I've been thinking about it." "Come to any conclusions?" Bobby chewed. "Maybe you can't tow it. Winch might work if you anchor to something big enough. The repulsion field's still partial. If it's running, it'll fight you. You'd need to cut the power cell first." Tom nodded slowly. "You know where the power cell is?" Bobby reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to Tom. On it was a hand-drawn diagram, the outline of a grav tank with an arrow pointing to the rear undercarriage section, labeled in Bobby's handwriting, "Power cell. Access panel. Flathead screwdriver." Tom looked at the diagram, looked at Bobby. Bobby shrugged. "One of the scouts had a service manual in his vest pocket. In Vraxian, I had a couple hours." Tom took the diagram. "I'll get Dale." At Dale's farm, the south field was quiet. Sergeant lay in the shade of the porch, unbothered. Dale was at the kitchen table with his second pot of coffee, writing a list on a yellow notepad. Tom sat down across from him and put the diagram on the table. "That's where the power cell is," Tom said. Dale looked at it, looked at Tom. "So we can move it?" "Probably," Dale nodded. "Good, I need that channel clear before planting season." Tom looked at the list Dale had been writing. It was an itemized damage estimate, fencing at the north border. Drainage channel, possible repair needed after tank removal. One fence post along County Road 9, plasma scorched. Soybean crop in the northeast corner, partial trampling. At the bottom, Dale had written net total, then crossed it out. Then written ask Hector who to bill. Tom almost laughed. "You're gonna bill them?" Dale looked up. "They trespassed, damaged property, and scared my dog." He picked up his coffee. "That's 3 separate charges where I come from." Tom drove into Colby at 5:30 to find that the town had already shifted from survival mode to cleanup mode, which in Harlow County looked almost identical to normal life, except louder. Main Street had a crew sweeping scorch marks off the pavement. The diner's front window had a sheet of plywood over it with "We're open" written on it in marker. Inside, Donna Fletcher was running a full dinner service to a packed house. The counter stools were full. Every booth was full. The waitress, who Tom knew as quiet and careful, was moving through the room at a speed that suggested she had been running on adrenaline since 6:00 a.m. and had decided that stopping was not an option. Tom sat at the counter. Donna put coffee in front of him without being asked. "You okay?" he said. "I'm annoyed," she said. "They cracked my front window, they scuffed my floor, and one of them knocked over the dessert display on the way out." She refilled a cup without looking. "But the pie held. The peach held, the pecan held, and the lemon icebox held, so I'm calling it a win." Hector Mills came in at 6:00 and sat next to Tom. He had dried mud on his boots and a notepad full of handwriting that Tom couldn't read at an angle. "What's the count?" Tom said. 14 alien soldiers still in custody," Hector said. "None of them injured seriously. 3 of them ate cornbread at the co-op staging area and appear to be fine. One of them is at the church." "Still?" Hector nodded. "Mrs. Linda Schieffer is feeding him banana pudding. He looks traumatized but stable. Pastor Wheeler said he's not causing any trouble and Linda has decided he's her project, so..." He shrugged. "That one might be a while." Tom considered that. "We're going to have to figure out what to do with 14 alien POWs in Harlow County, Mississippi." Hector looked at him. "I called the Pentagon at 5:15. "What they say?" "They said they'd send someone, probably take a couple of days." Tom drank his coffee. "Couple of days," he said. "Linda'll have that one speaking English by Thursday," Hector said. Randy came in at 6:30, phone in hand, still faintly narrating to his audience even though the stream was technically over. He had 34,000 followers by evening and had not yet processed that. He sat at the end of the counter and ordered pie. "You know you went viral," Donna said, sliding a slice of peach across the counter. Randy looked at his phone. He had 847 notifications. "Huh," he said, then he ate his pie. Dale came in at 7:00, cleaned up. Sergeant not with him because Sergeant had finally fallen asleep on the porch, and Dale had decided not to disturb him. He sat beside Tom, ordered the special, and put his yellow notepad on the counter. "I'm billing the Dominion for the fence, the channel repair, and the northeast soybean damage," he said. You think that'll work? Tom thought about it. I think you should try. How do I send an invoice to an alien empire? There was a pause around the counter. Bobby Prout, who had arrived without anyone noticing in the way Bobby always arrived, said from 2 stools down. One of the scouts had a communicator. I still got it. Everyone looked at him. Bobby shrugged. I can probably figure out how to send a message on it. Dale put his pen to the notepad. What do I put for the address? At 8:00 p.m., when the diner had finally started to thin out, Tom stepped outside onto the sidewalk. The street was quiet now. The plywood patch on Donna's window caught the light from the diner sign. Down the block, a hardware store had a new crack in the front glass that Walt Greer had already promised to fix tomorrow. The sky was clear, stars showing early. Tom stood there for a moment and looked up. Somewhere out there, the Vraxian fleet was moving away from Earth at speeds no human aircraft could match. Carrying 47 victories, and one withdrawal that nobody on that ship was going to bring up willingly. Down here in Harlow County, Mississippi, 14 alien soldiers were eating cornbread and banana pudding. One invoice was being drafted by a soybean farmer with a yellow notepad. And a man named Randy was trying to figure out how to turn 34,000 new followers into something useful. Carl Beaumont had asked about the grav tank in the south field and whether he could strip the engine. Bobby Prout had said probably. Walt Greer had said he'd be there at 7:00 a.m. With the recovery equipment, Dale had said bring coffee. It was Tuesday. It had always been Tuesday. And if the Vraxian Dominion, somewhere in deep space, was updating its threat classification file on Earth with the words "Do not return," nobody in Harlow County needed to know that tonight. Tonight there was pie. Tomorrow there was the South Field. And the day after that, Wednesday, was already looking better than it had any right to. If you made it all the way here, drop a comment and tell me what your favorite moment was. Was it Dale's invoice? Bobby and the service manual? Randy going viral on a Tuesday? Let me know. And if you shared this with someone today, you might have just made their week. Hit that subscribe button because the next story is already in the works, and trust me, the Dominion is not done making mistakes. They just haven't picked the wrong county yet.